It comes down to an affordability issue, not a supply issue, because the supply is not getting solved anytime soon. I don't think I'll ever see it fixed in my lifetime. We've always hear somewhere between 3.5 million houses to 5 million houses are undersupplied in the overall country. But I just saw an article the other day that said it's over 8 million. So who knows what the number is, but we know there's not enough housing, period.
So when I look at builders and you think about how many people they touch as a result of picking up a shovel. So I think the majority of builders forget on what's on the other side of that looking glass is the effect that you have on somebody that actually buys one of your homes. They've been scraping and saving so they can move. Let's forget about the multi-million dollars home, but they've been scraping and saving because now they've got the American dream, or in your case, homes built for America.
Yeah.
Right?
Welcome to the Builder Straight Talk podcast with your host, Michael Creasa. Get the unfiltered truth from the trenches of construction, real estate, and funding. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.
Well, hey there, friend. It's Michael Creasa here, the host of Builder Straight Talk. Welcome. And in this week's conversation, I had, a wonderful conversation with a gentleman by the name of Scott Menard. And he is the president of Homes Built for America. What a cool name. And with over 4 decades of experience, this guy has basically done everything you can possibly do in home construction, from assembling land, getting it ready for sale, selling off lots to the big developers, to actually the home construction side, spec development, custom. Like I said, he's done it all. And he's just such a down-to-earth guy. It was a pleasure having a conversation with him. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode. And speaking of enjoy, pretty please, light up my heart. 3 simple clicks of your mouse. Subscribe, like, and share. Let me repeat that. Subscribe, like, and share. That will make such a difference to our podcast and get it out to more builders so they can enjoy it just like you did. So one more time, I'm just going to ask with the click of the mouse, subscribe, like, and share. So without further ado, let's jump into this week's conversation with Scott Menard, the president of Homes Built for America. Well, my friend Scott, I want to say welcome to the call. I guess I want to say, have to say, could say. I already did. Welcome to today's call. And I feel
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's like the Christmas Carol, Dickens classic, where Scrooge has already seen all 3 ghosts and he's as giggly as a schoolboy. I don't know if you remember that line.
I do.
And for whatever reason, I've got that same enthusiasm because we did a post call, like a meet and greet, and there was just something about you that struck me as being approachable, fun, and knock on wood, I hope it continues through this conversation, but I got to put it on the table right now. I'm really thrilled about where we're going to go. So, my friend, let's roll the dice and let's take this wherever. So let's start off with the first question. Homes Built for America.
Yeah.
Give us a little bit about the backstory. And where did that name even come from? Because it reminds me of a South Park episode almost. That'd be like a title that they would use, Homes Built for America.
Don't get me started on South Park because I'm actually a huge South Park fan. And there's some really good shows I could always quote. Homes Built for America, it's interesting. So our CEO, very pro-America, very loves the American flag and the idea of home ownership and the American dream. And so when we decided we were going to start a home building company a little over 4 years ago, the name's everything, right? And so we actually spent a lot of time on the name. And what was crazy is we came up with all of these names because the parent company is called True Life Companies, which doesn't sound like a residential real estate developer at all. And so it was never going to be True Life Homes because there's True Mark Homes, there's True Homes, and we didn't want to confuse that with people. And then we thought, well, what kind of tells the story of who we are and what we do? And so we were trying to come up with something with homes and America and American. And believe it or not, it turns out our CEO, Scott Clark, and our VP of marketing had already coined Homes Built for America like 10 years ago. And so it was already inside the company. And we were going to go Built for America Homes. And then we begrudgingly kind of went for Homes Built for America because we thought HBFA had a better ring than BFAH. So it ended up just being Homes Built for America, and now we're kind of refining our core values and our mission statement and our tagline. Anyway, but we just think it totally just says who we are, and it's actually been a name that's resonated. So as we've gone out and talked to people love the name of the company. It sticks, and it's great because the people who buy our homes, we target first-time home buyers. I mean, that is really what we do. I always kind of say that we're the three-bedroom home company, but, we really sell to first-time buyers. A lot of times, they're dinks, dual income, no kids, all have great jobs. They want their piece of the American dream. So Homes Built for America is kinda how it happened. It came full circle. The company had it 15 years ago, and we ended up adopting it 10 years later, 4 and a
I
half
like
years
that
ago.
name.
So
The
anyway.
the other one, True Life, sounds more like an Amway or some kind of herbal tonic or something,
I didn't even
colostomy
say it.
product.
I
Yeah.
didn't even say it, and I was gonna say it, and that's exactly what happens is we go to city council meetings, and we'll go, "What were the True Life companies?" People have said, "You sound like an herbal company." That is exactly what they said, or they think we're a church.
Well, I guess, yeah, one could make the argument there's
Yeah.
sort of like a church. Jesus was a carpenter. He built stuff. You guys are building homes. So maybe if we stretch that. But so hold on. There's something you said. You've only been around for 4 years, but the
Yeah.
parent company has been around for 10. Like,
Yeah, the
kind of
parent
take me back.
company's been
What's
around. It started in, I think, technically 2008, but then there was even kind of a predecessor before that, but really have been a real estate developer since 2008 and really did a lot of real estate development. I mean, we've developed 10,000 lots across the country, and but a lot of people didn't know of us because 'cause we're a business to business developer, and so we would work in California, and at the time, we were in Colorado and Denver and down in Arizona, and we would take big projects, get them entitled, and then sell them to, top 25 home builders like Lennar or Richmond American, Toll Brothers, Pulte, TriPoint. So the home builders knew who we were, but you wouldn't know us, outside of that. And so we were really just a lot supplier. And then we
oh,
started the
okay.
home building company, coming out of COVID. And so now we're also a retail company as well as a business to business company.
So again, talk to me like I'm six. So prior to Homes Built for America, you guys would scope the countryside looking for land,
Uh-huh.
and then you would buy the land, develop it, take it to the point where the lots are ready to go, and you would
Yeah.
knock on the door of, say, like DR Hortons or somebody and say, "Hey guys, here's what we got."
Yeah, but we typically did it in markets where it was difficult to get entitlements. So, like, we're not in Texas. Well, we are now, but we're in Austin. But we would go to markets where it's difficult to get entitlements because, the thing that really changed after the great financial crisis is the home builders, in a bad way, it crushed our industry. But in a good way, it really turned all of the home building companies into sophisticated businesses that actually operated like good businesses. And so pre-Great Recession, you had a lot of home building companies that did a lot of land speculation, tied up lots of options, and controlled a lot of land across the country. And then when the great financial crisis hit, there was lots of write-offs, lots of write-downs, lots of impairments, and Wall Street did not look at that favorably. So coming out of the recession, everybody started operating more like a sophisticated business that needed to, pay attention to Wall Street and how they're valued, which is why, home builder stocks for the most part have done really good since the financial crisis because they operate like good sophisticated businesses, but they don't carry a lot of inventory anymore. And so you see a lot of companies like Lennar, Meritage, where they have these off balance sheet, land businesses off to the side. So they have a pipeline, but they don't carry it on the balance sheet of the home building companies. And so that's really what kind of happened for us is we realized now there's this hole in these marketplaces where it's hard to entitle land like in California and certainly in Denver, Colorado, and you're even starting to see it now in Arizona, kind of in Phoenix, Scottsdale area, where the builders don't want to take the risk of the entitlement. But if you get it entitled, they absolutely want to buy it. Because the home builders, they'll take cost risk and they'll take market risk, but they will not take the entitlement risk. And if they will, it's to a very manageable level. So companies like us have, been able to thrive by buying up these properties. And we typically do it through an option agreement. And then throughout that option period, we'll go get it entitled and we'll make land deposits. And then once we get what we call it, either approved tentative map or an approved parcel map or a preliminary plat, then we'll sell it over to a home builder.
It's
And
a
then,
brilliant business plan.
yeah,
It's like you identify the missing pieces. Here's what we're doing, and then we're offering it to somebody else. Why aren't we doing it ourselves? Like, taking it to
yeah,
completion. Now let's actually build houses on it. What was the motivating factor that you focused on? I don't want to say entry level. I hate that word affordable. What the
yeah.
buzzword now is
Yeah, we call
obtainable.
it we use attainable is what we call it, which is still an imperfect word, but it's better.
Yeah, it's like salt in my ass. But the philosophy is basically,
There's
hey,
that
here's a
too.
house that yeah, a family can actually move into versus
Yeah,
I don't have to have a mansion and a yacht before I buy a house for my family. But
yeah.
what was it that made you guys focus on that price point to begin with, as opposed to maybe doing high end or doing custom? Why that market segment?
Yeah, for a couple reasons. The first thing, we really do believe in the American dream, and, one of our sayings in the company is, we wanna develop companies where our kids can live here too, and that really means something to us. Part of it is the business driver is we know at the end of the day, all the big builders do want that kind of vanilla first-time buyer product because you've got this whole host of millennials going through our country right now. I mean, what's like 100 million millennials and that perfect, home buying age of 25 to, well, I think it's almost 40 now. And, that's the people we serve. That's the demographic we think is the most important. And they're the ones that are having the hardest time buying houses. And, we're all at that age that I'm, ashamed to admit that I'm at that age, but we all have kids now that are at that home buying age and they're having a heck of a time. And if you don't have wealthy parents that can either give them a down payment or the kids, have a good job where they get stock grants or big bonuses, it's really hard to come up with a down payment to buy a house. So we figured let's focus on it and let's just do our part to make sure that we're filling that market segment. And we've had to stick to our guns on that is who we are, and that's what we're gonna stick to. Because obviously, there's companies like Toll Brothers where they focus on the higher end and the top line revenue, and same thing with some other builders I can name, but we just think that's tried and true, and it serves our country well, and we think it's also a good market to be in, so that's what we do.
So let me push back. What's this age that you're embarrassed to state
Well,
you're in that? Like I'm 65, man. I wear it like a badge of courage because I
yeah,
find
well,
now that I'm older, I don't give a shit what people think about me. I'm usually 2 sentences ahead of my brain at any given moment. My underwear is usually dry. That's a good thing. And at the end of it, I just find I'm enjoying it more. That what's I'm not trying to be pretentious. I'm not trying to fit
yeah.
in. Either you like me or you don't, and either one's okay by me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that part of it. I mean, I am what I am, and I am what I am, and I'm totally comfortable with that. I mean, I don't know if you see what I'm wearing, but I wear pretty much a polo and a golf vest every day, and it's kind of it's my thing. But I I I don't really enjoy getting older. I'm 55 right now. I turned 56 on Monday. I started in this business when I was 17 years old, and it's 37, 38 years I've been doing this, and it's crazy. I never thought I would be that guy, and now I am. And so my wife can handle the aging way better than I can. I just struggle with it, but it is what it is.
So let me put it in building or construction terms. What you're saying is there's cracks in the foundation, the plumbing is starting to leak, and you're swaying to one side. Does it encapsulate that
Well,
more
I
or
hope
less?
not that. I like to think that I'm not falling apart.
Let's go back. You said you got into this business at 17. So was it under the tutelage of a relative? Was it a friend that pulled you? And what got you down that path in the first place?
Yeah, I'm like a lot of people in this business and probably true of a lot of different industries. I'm a legacy kid. My grandfather built houses, and in fact, my grandfather, Brighton, he had a contractor's license in the 100,000 range, and if you're from California, like, holy smokes, that's really old. And so my family got into the business a long, long time ago, and then my, uncle and my dad built houses for my grandfather here in Northern California, and then my dad was a journeyman framer. He ended up, falling off a roof and getting hurt, so he got out of it completely and kinda went into high tech and banking. But my uncle stayed in the business and, had a really good career at Broadmoor Homes and Pulte, and at one point was, really high up and, was the number 2 guy at KB working for Bruce Carrots, and my uncle ran all of North America at one point. So, when I was, 17, graduated from high school, we were at my uncle's for Easter, and my dad goes, "Hey, why don't you give my kid a job for the summer?" So, while I was going to college at UC Santa Barbara, that was my summer and Christmas vacation job was I worked for KB in the, Bay Area division, and I was a laborer out in the field, and I that's how I got in the business and never got out.
So you started off labor in the field. Did you kind of then go through each category sort of thing to get an overall feel of what construction's all about, and then ultimately get to a point where you could be a developer?
Yeah. Yeah, essentially. So because I had my uncle in the business, I was fortunate enough to get some pretty good advice from him over the years. One of them is when I did graduate and I was in my mid-20s, I went from being a laborer and then I moved into being a customer service rep. So I got to actually work on houses and fix them and, work with the homeowners. And then was fortunate enough to move into the office, and I actually got a job with Shea Homes after I graduated college. And then I, over the years, moved into purchasing, and so I ran that. And so I asked my uncle, "Hey, how do I become division president? I want that job. That looks pretty cool." He just gave me some great advice and said, "You really need to focus on working in a lot of different departments." And so he's like, "You gotta move around." And so, wanna get into land acquisition, get into forward planning, learn how to do entitlements, get into the operations, learn how it all works, understand marketing, work with the accounting departments. So that way, nobody can kind of BS you as you kind of move up the ranks. Because if you're gonna run everything, you need to know how everything works. And so that's exactly what happened. So I went from purchasing, and then I went into project management and forward planning, and then I did land acquisition, and then I got to run the operations, and then promotions just kept happening. And I was fortunate enough to be the youngest vice president at Ryland in the country at the time, and then I worked for a guy named Mike Forsum, who's just recently, I think, retired out of Lancy, but, he went from Ryland over to Taylor Woodrow. A bunch of us followed him over there. I ended up becoming president of the, Northern California division for Taylor Woodrow. I was the youngest president at the time, and I just got a lot of really good opportunities throughout the years and tried to take advantage of them and got a lot of experience. So when I finally came to True Life back in 2013, I felt like I kinda had a lot of well-rounded experience to where I could kinda do everything. So it's what's been able to, help us start a home building company from ground zero. And, said like in 4 years, we're the 14th largest home builder in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we're 171st in the country, and we didn't exist 4 years ago.
Man, okay, so here's your opportunity to brag. Like, how many doors would you do on average in the course of a year?
Yeah, well, let's put it this way. We did 13 2 years ago, we did 71 last year, and then this year we're gonna do about 89, but we've got a lot more standing inventory, so if sales were a lot more robust, we could have easily done 115 to 125 houses this year, and then in about 2 years from today, we'll be at around 350 here in California, and then expect to get up to about 600 by 2030. So
So you've been
we're
on a constant trajectory upwards, which is really good. Like,
Oh, it's great.
so what would you attribute that to? Like, I've interviewed other builders that are struggling, like they're doing, let's say, 10 to 20. They want to expand. They want to make that pivot and get better at what they do. But for whatever reason, is it fear? Is it lacking the know-how?
Complete
Well,
stupidity.
yeah, yeah. Like Scott, what would you do? But you've been, I don't want to say riding this carpet. That sounds derogatory because you've worked your way to the top. But you've never been in a position along that timeline where you're working for yourself, and whether you're going to eat tomorrow is dependent on you.
Yeah.
So from where you're sitting right now, what would you tell builders that do want to scale, that want to go and increase that production level? Let's say from 10 to 20, they want to double where they are. What would be your words of wisdom that you could share?
You have to get comfortable with the risk and the fact that it's scary and that, you know, the dollars are real, the investors are real, the banks are real. It's a lot of stress, it's a lot of pressure, and you gotta just be comfortable and okay with the risk. And if you are, then you gotta go for it, and if not, it'll always hold you back. And the one thing I've seen from the people who've done it before me, they're just fearless. They're just absolutely fearless. Nothing's gonna stop them and get in their way. And I will tell you, and that was the hardest thing for me to get over. And the great financial crisis kinda did that because I got pretty well beat up through that, like a lot of people in our industry did. And after a while, you go, "What do I got to lose? I got nothing to lose. I totally know how to do this. I've seen other people do it before me, and I know I'm just as good as they are, so why can't I do it?" And that's really the attitude I just finally had to adopt and get comfortable with, and I'm totally comfortable with it. And that's really it. It's an attitude shift. It's not an ability shift, because I would actually argue it's way easier to build 100 homes than 10. I couldn't build 10 homes. I don't even know how to do that. Like a custom home, no idea. But if I want to go build 100 homes, I totally know how to do that. You just
There's something along your timeline of growth. You said you touched basically all aspects of the construction field. If I'm looking at one of these guys, could part of the problem be that you think that you need to know everything versus a true CEO knows the people he needs to reach out to get the answers if he doesn't have them? So
yeah.
is there an element of taking ego out of the equation and saying, I'm at that point now where, you know what, I hate as hell doing all the accounting and doing the estimating. I need to bring in a project manager who's going to do that. Do you think that's part of the problem, is being able to let go and actually delegate and then look at the processes? This is going to cost me money. No, by investing in that person, it's actually going to make you money.
Yeah, it's a really good comment, and it's totally truthful. And when we first started, it was me and another gentleman in the office. We were way over our head. We really, because the hardest part of all of this is finding the money. It's the equity and the debt everything we do here is non-recourse construction loans. So you can find non-recourse construction loans. That really wasn't the hard part because there's enough debt funds out there and enough lenders out there. But it's finding the equity partners is the hard part. And we were over our head and didn't know what we were doing because we'd always worked for big builders that were well capitalized. So going out and trying to attract capital when you've never done it on your own, it's not easy, right? And especially when you don't have a rich guarantor behind you, which we didn't. We went and found a CFO that we honestly couldn't afford, but we had to bring him in. And we brought him in, and he had a lot of experience and totally understood how to do this. And had we not made that investment in that man, and he's still here, never would have gotten off the ground. And so, when you want to grow, yeah, you've got to recognize if you don't know what you're doing, you better go find the guy that knows how to shore you up and you go get him and you pay for it. And then now that we're growing, we just went and hired a real COO who knows how to do expansion. And as we start to move into different regions, he's a COO from other big companies. And so we hire the guys now before we need them versus what we're all so used to doing. You hire them way too late, and it's expensive for your cash flow deficit for a while. But, it's the investments you got to make if you know where you're going.
Take me back to what you talked to me like I'm 6 here when you said, non-risk,
Non recourse.
yeah, explain that to me a bit.
Yeah, so non-recourse essentially means you're not personally guaranteeing the loan, but you kinda are because you still have to do a completion guarantee, you have to do an interest reserve guarantee, and there's environmental guarantees, and so there's still guarantees because you gotta finish the project. The difference is you're just not personally on the hook for the loan, and so, usually when you're dealing with a regular bank, the banks want guarantees, and like I said, we just don't have that really wealthy person or company behind us where we can do that yet. We'll get there. So we were doing non-recourse loans out of essentially debt funds that will do it for our industry. But you pay a higher interest rate for it. And, not all equity investor partners are excited about that. A lot of times they want the banks for the lower interest rates, but, we didn't want to have to hold guarantee risk. And so it just makes things a little bit harder, but not impossible.
Is that where you're using now, or have you guys pivoted over to some other relationship now with money?
We're still using non-recourse, although we just joined forces with another group where they actually came in with a balance sheet, and so we actually just got a bank loan on our most current project, and they put up the guarantees, which was great. So it's getting better. It's getting, more affordable for these projects because the problem with the debt funds that we had over the last several years is, in March 22 when they started raising interest rates, our interest rate on our construction loans went from a real big number to a gigantic number, and it just starts to just erode your profit, especially when, revenues have been compressed over the last year or so just from mortgage rates being high and all of us trying to struggle to get sales. Fun business, huh?
I was gonna say in theater, that's called a pregnant pause. Like
Yeah,
when you don't
that was
say
a
anything, you
pregnant
let
pause.
you let the tension build because that was a natural point to say something about Sound Capital, which is our parent
Yeah,
company, that actually keeps the lights going with this podcast. And their funding, and obviously, I'll put you in touch with them if that's something
yeah,
you're
please.
interested in. They focus on builders. That's all they do. They don't lend money on cars or Chesterfields or breast implants, anything like that. It's all focused on builders. And it's interesting because most of them, well, not most of them, but a good number of them are builders themselves. So
Yeah,
they know what it's like to stay up nights and wonder, okay, the banks approve me, but now I need funding to cover X, Y,
yeah,
Z. Are they going to give me those advances?
yeah.
And what we're seeing more and more, and correct me if I'm wrong here, in the American landscape, a lot of banks are pulling back.
Oh, yeah,
So
no
even though
question.
they've already approved the funding, you've got
Yeah,
the hole in, you've got your trades lined up, and they're saying, "Hey, by the way, Scott, we said we're gonna fund you money." Well, yeah,
yeah. And there's a lot of truth in that, actually. Banks are pulling back. I was just at a Fisher conference back in, I think it was March, April, and there were banks there talking as well as debt funds, and they were talking about the construction industry has really changed to where the debt funds are providing most of the debt for construction financing for both commercial and multifamily and for sale. And the banks are really kind of pulling back. And in fact, banks are kind of behind the scenes to some of the debt funds. So it's really interesting. I mean, we work with BMO, that used to be Bank of the West. They still seem to be construction friendly, but a lot of the banks won't do home building construction anymore. So it has changed, and it is
well,
changing.
there's an evil part to this that a lot of builders don't realize is what the banks are doing. They have to show that they've made so many pitches for
Yeah,
funding, right? And
interesting.
it's basically like what do you want it like a scorecard, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't matter that they didn't complete it. They just had to make the pitch. So what a lot of banks are doing now is they make the pitch and then they make you, Scott, go through hurdles like, okay, we need more financials. Oh, you know what? There's something missing there. Can you bring us something else? And they're dragging out that process to the point where out of sheer frustration, you just throw your hands up and walk away. So on the balance sheet, they can check off, yes, we made the pitch, but it was you that walked away. And I don't understand that at all. And especially in a market like we have now, and you and I were talking about this earlier, that even at full capacity, we're still about 250,000 homes per year behind. So instead of getting behind this and being exactly where you are in the price point that people are looking for that can actually get in there, it's almost like they're going out of their way to make it harder, which brings us kind of full circle back to you alluded to how hard it is to get started and the bureaucracy involved. Being in California, you've got to be a friggin' Houdini because I don't know if it's sheer stupidity. Someone's going to call me, I'm sure, because you can't be, I don't think you can be that stupid by default that you would seriously tie up the whole construction process. So where I'm going with this, once upon a time, I think I shared with you, I interviewed a builder from DC and he bought, it was either a fire hall or something. That was his first investment. He got it about halfway done and then investors came in, they cut him a check with a lot of zeros and he sold it. Wash, rinse, repeated. He bought like this mini motel that he was going to convert into condos, got it about 50%. Investors came in, cut him a check with more zeros, and he sold that. So
Wow.
now he's on a winning streak. I'm like 100% here, right? I'm going to go throw the dice and go to California, says he, like Beverly
Mm.
Hillbillies, goes all the way out there. And then he discovers what building is really all about. And especially with one of his first builds, to get the water permit took him over a year. And I think he said he was into it for about 100 and quarter before he could get that permit. So for a smaller builder that's starting out, when we were talking about fear, like how do you capitalize floating a project in that what it's purgatory, in that
Yeah.
purgatory waiting for the regulators to give you what you need?
Yeah. It's really capitally intensive, and it takes a lot of balls, and you better have a lot of money. I mean, it's true. I mean, just for instance, just when we tie up a piece of property, and like I said, we do it through an option agreement, which means we'll have 18, 24 months to go get a tentative map. Not only are you making a lot of money in deposits, I mean, it's not uncommon to have $1 million, $2 million in land deposits, over that time period you made to the land seller. You're easily spending a $500,000 just for the plan sets and paying all the fees just to get your essentially a set of plans approved by the city, which includes planning commission, city council, to allow you just to even give you the legal right to build the project. And then when you put in all your overhead and management and just what it costs for you to run it, I mean, it's easy to be 3 to 4 or $5 million into a piece of property and you haven't even closed on it yet. And then on top of it, then because California land prices are so high, comparatively speaking to the rest of the country, I mean, it's not uncommon to have your land basis be 30, 35% over the overall sales price to a home, which that's obviously not what happens in Texas and Arizona and Florida. So you've got this huge capital intensive property that as soon as you close on it, it's ticking away at an interest rate and it's a big part of the whole pie. And so, yeah, you've got to move quick. And so, it's not easy for people from the outside to come into California. You kind of have to be like me. That's literally I'm born and raised here, and from San Jose. I mean, I'm literally a local kid. You kind of just have to know your way around and know what it takes and know how to get things done. Because yeah, taking 12 months to get a water permit, that's very typical. That's not a unique situation. That's what it takes to get water around here. Is sometimes through a sanitary district, and it routinely takes a year to get through a city on all your improvement plans and permits, and it takes a while, and it's a lot of regulations and bureaucracy, and it's a
Well,
lot,
then you've
man.
got all the environmental stuff to make sure you're not interfering with some migration pattern of
Yeah,
a certain species of a butterfly or
yeah,
something. And again, it takes me back to it's almost like they're going out of their way to
yeah,
make it either cost prohibitive or the risk to reward ratio is just so high that the average builder is going to say, nah, I don't want to
yeah,
play this game. I'm going to go to Utah or Idaho.
uh-huh,
You
and
know,
that's exactly what's happened. We've seen a lot of people go to Nevada and Idaho and Montana. We've seen a lot of builders do that, and for us, so we kinda saw it as a competitive advantage because we know it's not easy. So the fact that we've got 8 projects here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we don't really have a lot of competition, so really it's just market forces that really affect the projects as much, not really builder competition. And that's why we kind of like our position overall because we're really only competing with a few other builders and there's enough to go around and there's a shortfall of housing. So, really it comes down to an affordability issue, not a supply issue, because the supply is not getting solved anytime soon. I don't think I'll ever see it fixed in my lifetime. So, I mean, there's always going to be a massive housing imbalance. And, we in the industry, we've always heard somewhere between 3.5 million houses to 5 million houses are undersupplied in the overall country. But then I just saw an article the other day that said it's over 8 million. So who knows what the number is, but we know that there's not enough housing to go around, period. And it's not getting fixed anytime soon, no matter how hard anybody tries.
When you approach a project, like, are you doing infill? You're looking
Yeah.
for raw land still? Okay. So
Yeah.
what is it that green lights a project? Like you're driving around the neighborhood, are deals being brought to you by realtors? Take me through that process of what you do to get it to
Yeah.
the point where you're actually digging a hole.
Yeah, one thing we drive around a lot looking at property. People bring stuff to us all the time. We can size up a property in a matter of hours to know if it's something we're interested in. Obviously, location always drives a lot. We always want to be near schools, public transportation, definitely freeways because freeways are important here in the Bay Area because you need to be able to get all around the Bay Area. If you're around BART, that's kind of an extra bonus, but we really wanted kind of close to jobs. That's a big thing for us, especially since we're looking at first time buyers and these people are typically both working. So being close to jobs and transportation is kind of everything. And so once we find that, then we have to dig in and find out, will the city even allow it there? Because between general plan and zoning, here in the Bay Area, you got to figure out, does it even allow for residential? Because most properties that have office or retail or industrial, most cities don't want to convert it to residential. So you have to find something that has a residential zoning or general plan on it to even have a shot. And that's the hard part because the cities are very specific on where they want it and more importantly, where they don't want it. So there's really a lot of limited places you can do it. The thing that's been kind of our bread and butter over the last several years is a lot of these old blighted retail shopping centers, these all corner shopping centers, these little one-story things that have been around since the 50s and 60s. Those are kind of done. And so a lot of cities want to turn those into residential. And so that's what we've been focusing on. So we're actually working on a lot of old retail shopping centers on the corners, and we're going to get those converted into townhome projects. So that's what we've been doing.
It's beguiling that the governance would rather hold on to a defunct shopping mall that has no prospect of ever having life breathed back into it than having houses that people can move into, which would then facilitate a demand for maybe now we do open up a retail center. Like if you don't have the people in the first place with the money to buy stuff, there's no point having an empty building that doesn't have stuff that people won't go to. I'm just, am I naive here or what am I missing?
Because it happens all the time here because there's so much sex appeal with Facebook and LinkedIn and Google, and everybody thinks Amazon's coming to their town. So they just don't ever want to relinquish their office and their industrial because they just fantasize that, they're going to get these big companies coming to their towns. And by the way, they don't. And they'll let these properties sit blighted because they would rather have either the cachet of the big company here, or if they got retail, they always think some big retail customer is going to come in and then they get their sales tax. And when it comes to residential, oh, you're a drain on our services. Yeah, but we pay a lot of fees to the city for that. We bring in construction workers who literally spend money in your city. And then, then we bring in homeowners who also spend money in your cities. They may even work in your cities and they pay property taxes. But they just don't look at that as really a revenue generator. So it just gets frowned upon when you talk about residential. So converting office and industrial is darn near impossible in the Bay Area. It just is, no matter how hard you politic and try. In San Jose, that's 1 million people down there, and that's where I was born and raised. There is so much underutilized industrial that could be converted in a minute to residential. Much needed. Never going to happen. There's a moratorium. You're not allowed to convert industrial to residential. So, and that's what I made my whole career on in the 90s and early 2000s was San Jose converting industrial to residential.
Is it fear? Is it ignorance? Is it they think they've got the winning lottery ticket? Like, what is it about city governance? And I'm using that as a grand tent, if you will, that they're all under that one umbrella, if you will. They don't have a forward vision. What do you think is the root cause for this?
A lot of the Bay Area is bedroom communities, and so they're always looking at jobs to housing balances. And so they're always looking at that ratio, and they all want more jobs than houses, right? And so Like San Jose's got a really poor jobs to housing balance, and that's been their driver for trying to maintain their industrial and office. So, I mean, I do kinda understand that, but it's been 20 years now, things aren't changing, and then since COVID, the demand for office has gone way down across the country. So it's, in the industrial, that kinda thing already kinda went by the wayside. Amazon already kind of expanded to where they needed to be, and there's really not much happening in industrial since then. So you would think that enough has, gone by where it's time to start solving the housing crisis because when you're moderate priced home, I think in Santa Clara County or San Jose is like $2 million now. The only way you're gonna, bring that down is by building more first-time buyer type product like what we do, and so, there's a point where you just need to solve where the market really is, not where you're trying to force it to go, you know? But it takes political courage to do that.
It's sad that the house I'm living in now, well, it's not, it's a train station, right? Old abandoned train. So I moved
That's
up from
awesome.
sleeping in a bus shelter to, now I own a train station. But I couldn't afford to buy this place. If I were to put it on the market today, I couldn't buy it back.
Yeah,
And when we moved up here, that would have been 25 years ago. I'm an urban refugee. I left the city screaming. It was like Green Acres, but in reverse. I was uh, Ava Gabor waving goodbye from the balcony of our waterfront condo to moving up here to the corner of Lost and Nowhere. My wife
yeah,
was the driver on this one, and I would never go back. Like I just absolutely love it here. But back then, we paid. It was just shy of 200,000,
wow,
and during COVID, I was getting offers of 1.1, 1.2 because
wow,
we're right on the river. I've got 360 feet of river. Like it's a pretty
wow, how
iconic
neat.
piece of property. But I couldn't afford to move here,
Yeah,
right? And so when I think of first time buyers, like kids that have just rolled out of university with their degree in gender
yeah,
studies and all those other great career opportunities that they've got, they're still living in their parents' basement because they can't
yeah,
afford to buy
yeah,
ice cream, let alone a home.
totally true.
And so when you put a price tag at 2 million, again, it goes back to like, what are you thinking, man?
I know. And the only way you're gonna solve it is you have to start building, because the affordable housing stuff's really hard to do because you need tax credits, you need a lot of stuff to make the affordable housing, and there's certainly groups that do that, but we need to focus on that first time buyer attainable housing price. But, like, the builders don't wanna do it. They kinda wanna go after the higher incomers because 'cause they're usually better qualified. They can get a jumbo loan, and they'll pay top dollar for it, so they go for the top end, top line revenue stuff, and I totally get why they do it, 'cause the margins are better, but we've gotta really start focusing more on the first time buyer. I mean, the industry does and the cities do, because it's the only way you're gonna get this down is you gotta start building more condos and more importantly, townhomes, because people like townhomes. They don't like condos. They like townhomes. They like condos if you're in San Francisco, or if you're in LA or Toronto like you were, but most people wanna live in a regular three-story town, and then you move from there to a single family detached house, and then you just start kinda graduating along the way. I mean, we have found out through a lot of studies there is a natural order of things. And so while cities want to try to re-engineer everybody into living in high rises in the cities, at the end of the day, people don't want to do that. They're going to end up having they're going to have a couple, they're going to have kids or pets, and then they're going to want to move into the suburbs with their house. It's just, there's a natural order. It's just taking longer for people to do it because of affordability. But we're finding millennials are just following the same track that all of the other demographics did before them, and they all still want to buy a house. And so at the end of the day, we just need to really supply that in the marketplace as much as, we all hate to admit it. Because right now in Hayward, we're selling our townhomes in the around $800 to $900,000 range for a three-story town, three-bedroom. And then we're selling, believe it or not, our first-time buyer stuff in Sunnyvale. It's 1.35 to $1.8 million, and that's a first-time attainable, townhome in Sunnyvale. But that's what the market is. I mean, and we're the first-time buyer product, and they're all first-time buyers for the most part, and some of the people at Hayward literally have moved out of their parents' house to move into this, and it's exactly what you think it is. They're in their 30s by and large.
Yeah. But you as a builder, your hands are tied because obviously, I mean, you're in the business to make money, right?
Yeah,
And I'm not saying obscene loads of money, but no, you're in the business to make a money, turn a profit. You're feeding your family, employing people,
yeah,
and
I think
even
I
if
do.
you wanted to I don't want to say undervalue, but let's say you came in at a ridiculously low price point.
Yeah,
Then now you're cutting corners on the quality of the build.
yeah,
Obviously, the density must increase, and you're almost crossing that line into high density ghetto style
yeah,
housing.
yeah,
And, this will make you laugh. Here in Canada, our current prime minister, to solve the senior housing
yeah,
crisis, they're looking at shipping containers. And they
Oh,
have visions of lining up shipping containers 2 or 3 stories high,
yeah,
and they're gonna pack seniors
yeah,
into shipping containers. And the first time I heard that, I thought of that movie with Will Smith, I, Robot, I think it was called. And if you haven't seen that movie, it's
yeah, I
all
haven't.
about robots that are working as your slaves, and at one point, something triggers, call it AI,
Yeah,
and now they're thinking for themselves. And there's this whole village of shipping containers because that's where they send the robots to live, almost like migrant workers. And it's this dystopian dream. And that dystopian plot, if you will, from a movie is what our prime minister sees as the
yeah,
pathway forward to take care of seniors. Compound that, and I'll get off my moral soapbox
yeah,
in a second. They've also introduced something called MAID, which is suicide on demand. And
hmm,
again, they're thinking you're old, you have nobody to take care of you. The respectable way out would be a needle,
wow,
and then you pass off into the great beyond. And now they're extending it down to minors. And you could be a child that's depressed, and
wow,
without parental consent, you can still go down that same path. And this dystopian Orwellian nightmare has me, my bags are always packed in the car in a full tank of gas because I'm always looking at driving across the border and
yeah,
claiming to be a refugee. Because when I think of the US,
yeah,
and you're going to laugh, but this is part of your motto, homes built in America, that you are still that shiny city on the hill,
yeah,
right? And the whole world looks at you as much as, again, maybe it's a paradox. People come to the US, they hate you, they want to change the very country that they came to. They left the shithole that they were in to come
yeah,
to the US, but they want to change the US into the shithole that they left.
yeah, I know.
And I want to hit my head on something because I just don't understand.
Yeah, and, and I certainly do see some of that for sure, but I also do see some of the very positive at the same time because, the Bay Area, it really is eh, all the different cultures come here to work in high tech. So you see a lot of people from China, you see a lot of people from India and the Middle East, you even see a lot of people from Russia, and just having worked with them over the years at different companies, they'll all tell you, "We love this place, and, we know it's better than where we came from, and we wanna be Americans, and we want the American lifestyle, and we want all the freedom associated with it." Now, as I say that, a lot of them also do go back after they've had their careers, and they'll tell you, "We're once we're kinda done working here, we're going back home." But when they're here, they fully embrace everything we're doing. So I do see the positive, but I also do see the negative that you just talked about. And, yeah, they do come here and they do try to change it. And, there's a town here not too far from my office that's doing just that, actually. It's kind of getting taken over and it's going in an interesting direction. So we'll see what happens.
I was in California. So California is this unique anomaly in time and space because you've got literally anything that you could want for a
Yeah.
healthy 50-year-old. You could go skiing in the morning.
Uh-huh.
You could be kayaking in the afternoon and having a cocktail on an open deck somewhere in the evening. It's just phenomenal. And I was in California. I used to go quite a bit when I was speaking, but I was there 3 weeks ago in San Diego at a conference.
Yeah.
And I got to say, I was impressed because we
Yeah.
were wandering out at night. We're right down by the water at the Marriott there at the convention. And it was pristine. It was beautiful, breathtaking almost. That there are all these walking trails. And we toodly do walk along the water all down to see the Midway, the big
Yeah.
aircraft carrier that you've got there. And I was thinking, this is a slice of heaven
Yeah. It
that you
is.
got there.
And that's the allure of this place. Again, I mean, I'm born and raised here, and so is my wife. And it's been really weird for me because growing up here, you never thought in a million years you would ever consider leaving California. So we've all grown up thinking we're never leaving. I can't tell you how many of our friends have left. Like people we know have left and they've gone to Texas and Arizona and some to Florida. And we've certainly contemplated. The problem is, yeah, we pay a dumb tax for living here, no question, and it's really hard, but we make good money. But honestly, our money that we make here doesn't go as far as people in other areas making far less than us. I mean, the cost of living here is ridiculously high. What we pay for gas and electricity and property tax and homeowners insurance, it's all insane. But it's beautiful, man. I mean, it's like I get to see San Francisco whenever I want. I can be at the beach in 50 minutes. I can be at world class skiing in 3.5 hours. It's just, I mean, the weather's great 12 months a year. I mean, our winters are nothing. It's fantastic. I mean, I can golf 12 months a year. I mean, I golf regularly between Christmas and New Year's. mean, who else can do that? I mean, it's crazy what we have here. We have world-class golfing down in Monterey, and you talked about San Diego and Southern California. I mean, God, it's beautiful, and then we got the Santa Barbara coast. I mean, this place is unreal. So, you know what? It's worth all of the crap you have to put up with because it's a great place to live, and at the end of the day, people wanna live here, they want to invest here, and they wanna work here. So, you know, and even those people are fleeing, there are people coming right in to take their places. So, I mean, sure, there's been an exodus, but it hasn't been enough to affect the economy or what I do for a living.
Yeah, boasting about golfing in the winter, that's no big deal. I can golf here too. But I'm wearing snowshoes, a parka, and I'm using a hockey stick, but I can still go outside and golf. Wave the magic wand, Scott. Like if let's say you've got all the power in the world, you're sitting there, magic wand. What changes could you implement that you think would fast track construction so we could build more homes? We could build them cheaper so now they're affordable. What would you do? As king of the forest, what would you do?
Wow, that's a interesting, provocative question. In California, I'm not really sure what I could do. If I was in other places, I could probably give you a ton of answers. It's a good question. If I could somehow modularize the townhome process, I would do that. They've been making giant strides over the last 15, 20 years, but they're not there yet to where it's affordable enough to really do on a mass production scale. But I do think it's coming, and I do think I'll see it in my lifetime to where I think that's really where a difference can be made. I'm not sure the politics and the regulation are ever going to change enough to where I could do anything to make that better. Because you asked the question, what could I do? I can't effectuate some of the policy stuff. But I think on the home building process side, I do think there's stuff, and it's coming quick. Between the 3D printing, the modularizing, I've seen the container stuff. I am just absolutely marvel at what they can do with containers these days. They turn these things into really nice, tiny homes. I mean, they're nice. And some of the 3D
But
printing
they're not
stuff, I've been
cheap
fast.
though, Scott. They're not skit because when you factor in what you have to do to make it livable, then you're cutting in windows and
Yeah.
let's call it infrastructure for lack of a better thing. Price per square foot, you're about the same, if not more, than a custom home.
That's been the problem, and that's why nothing's really taken off here in California. Whenever they've tried to do something modular or they've tried containers, that's the problem, is the costs are still so expensive because once you have to Californiaize the whole thing with either structural integrity, and there's really no scalability to any of this stuff yet, so it's still really expensive, and then by the time you truck it all in, then you got that cost, and that's why nobody's really embraced it yet, but it's coming. You can tell, like, they're finally making it's coming. Somebody's gonna figure it out. 'Cause there's enough emphasis on it, and you've got enough high-tech people trying to solve it. There's too many bright minds working on it now that it's gonna get solved.
I interviewed a guy by the name of Ken Selmer. I'll introduce you to him. He's the modular home guru, if you will. Like he writes the newsletter, he formed
Yeah,
the federation. The big thing that's been holding them back is the financing because
yeah,
banks look at modular and they're thinking, like, like what is this? We understand that when you're
yeah,
building something in the mud, because okay, there's land, you own that, there's stuff that you're
yep,
using, materials. Okay, there's something we can seize at the end of the day. But on a modular, it's a production line.
yeah,
So at what point do we actually own something tangible as opposed to, well, we just ordered it for Amazon and we're waiting for it to arrive? And
right,
he seems to think that they've cracked that nut, that
yeah,
they've got the financing side handled. That's what, again, I'll do a plug for Sound Capital. They're working with him right now as we speak because they see this being a viable option to get homes built quickly.
yeah. I think it is a
Would,
viable option. I
would
do,
that be something you guys consider in California? Like if it was affordable, is that something you would look at doing?
absolutely. Yeah, we would, we would, and we do look at this stuff, and we're constantly throwing different articles at us as soon as we see something new kinda being done somewhere else in the country, and they started Katerra here, which that went under, but they're always trying to start some other modular company here in Silicon Valley. So we pay attention to this stuff because we would absolutely do it if it became cost effective. But until that time, it's hard. It's still cheaper to just stick frame a house with a bunch of guys. It's crazy. The way we build a house hasn't really changed much since the day I was born. It's all still man-made, it's still people, it's still materials, it's still all put together out in the field, and there's still some waste, although we've gotten a lot better at it. It's the same old process, just the house is a lot tighter and there's a lot more structural components on it, so that thing ain't falling down anytime soon, but it's the same process.
I would push back like the materials have changed. well, not style, but let's call it the science of construction has
Yeah.
changed in terms of, vapor barriers, insulation, holding that envelope. Have you been impacted at all by this? I don't want to call it a craze. That's being disingenuous. It's something that's being introduced, and there's becoming more awareness from the public, but it's the healthy home concept. Is that something that you guys have explored at all? Is it something you're familiar with? This
I'm
idea of
familiar
that.
with it. It's not something we've adopted yet, but it's something we'll
Okay.
probably be adopting over time. Because honestly, I kinda have to understand really what that means, because really what's happened over the years is, we have Title 24 in California, which is energy compliance of the home and has to do with electrical and insulation and windows and all that stuff. But really what's happened is, houses built in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, they were well-built homes, but there was a breathability aspect to it. So if as water or air and, different temperatures would go in and out of the house, the thing could breathe and dry out. Well, really since I would tell you, 90s till now, we've just continued to keep making these houses more watertight. And it's like, that's a problem because then that's how we had that whole mold issue, 10, 15 years ago, with that's has pretty much gone away. But you're making these houses too tight to where now I'm not sure that you really are creating a healthy, clean house anymore, because you're almost like trapping bad air inside the house. And so there's got to be more of a livability approach to it. I think we've kind of gone too far, and I know I'm not going to win that battle. It is what it is, but it's just, but I like, what you said. And we do need to find out more about it because I would like to understand it more.
Yeah. When you talk about airtight, live in a 150-year-old train station. The only thing tight
Yeah,
around here is my underwear around Christmas.
I know.
Everything else passes bad.
You
Yeah.
could feel the cold weather coming right through the window glass. That's always my favorite.
When we first moved up here, and I remember it would have been September that we moved up, and so it's a train station, but it was being run as a banquet hall, right? And so we take over the existing business. My wife has no experience in hospitality whatsoever, but believe it or not, behind this tiny frame, I worked as a bouncer and a bartender for about 14 years.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So I've got the hospitality background about how to politely tell somebody that I'm going to put them through a pane of glass if they don't walk away. And so we ran this banquet hall for 5 years. It was fun, it was interesting. But I remember it was so it's the Christmas season, so almost every night we're booked with office parties and Christmas
Oh,
parties,
wow.
whatever. And so I'm sitting in the living room and just kind of, decompressing after a busy night, and I'm watching the curtains do this.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
wind is coming
Uh-huh.
through these old windows, and the
Uh-huh.
curtains are literally dancing almost horizontal.
I believe it.
And Yeah, but then to your point about healthy home, or to my point about healthy homes, airflow was not an issue. It was how do we keep the
But you
heat
need it.
in, right?
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly. But you need the airflow. You gotta send me a picture of your house. I gotta see it.
Oh, yeah, you'd love it. Like, we started prior to COVID. I remember this also well. I had just got back from a trip in California. So I was in California for 3 weeks. And part of what I did, I invented a job for myself, and it was teaching realtors how to do video
Hmm.
using their iPhones or their mobile devices, right?
Yeah.
And so I created a whole curriculum around how to get over the fear of I'm too fat, I'm too ugly, anything with a two out front of it, to press the goddamn button and do a video. And I was getting paid like a king to travel all over both sides of the border to teach this. And so again, we were in California for 3 weeks, started off in the wine region, like Napa, absolutely loved it. And these
Yeah.
were all real estate brokerages of various sizes that brought me up there. And predominantly we stayed, I think it was Marriott hotels. And this is all taken care of for us, right? So I just have to show up. But the thing that I loved was I step into the shower, and it was a magical moment because it had those rain head shower
Yeah.
things where you're
Oh,
standing
yeah.
underneath,
Oh, the
and
top of
it's
you?
like, yeah, little fairies are bringing in little buckets of water and bathing me. Like, I thought, this is fantastic. And so when we got home, I said to my wife, let's do a renovation of the
Yeah.
bathroom, and let's do this. Let's get the, rain head, because everything in here was ancient and antique. And so we had a contractor came in, friend of a friend, and we tore out the one bathroom, which was narrow. It was probably, I'm going to say 5 feet across, maybe 12 feet long with a divider. So part of it was our bathroom, but on the other side of the wall, it was the bathroom that served the bar for the banquet hall.
Okay.
And at this point, we already said, we're not doing this anymore. My consulting business took off. So the contractor said, you know what would make more sense if we knock out everything And because when it comes to reflooring, instead of taking it up to the wall and cutting, we could just lay this right across. I'm
Yeah.
thinking, okay, that makes sense. So we start ripping everything out like two naive children under his guidance. And when we rip out the ceiling tiles, no word of a lie here, there are 14 junction block boxes.
Oh
14.
my god.
And it literally looked like somebody took a bag full of octopuses and glued them to the roof. And so why this place didn't burn down is just
Oh my
beyond
god.
imagination. So now we've introduced an electrical problem, okay? So now we're tearing out all these wee beasties, and then to make more room in the bathroom, we say, "Okay, let's take out this wall to open it up," which then exposed the stairs to the second floor. And
Oh,
he looks at it and he says, "These are not to code. The only thing holding these stairs up is wallpaper, duct tape, and spit." Right? And at this point, I'm
oh my
defeated,
god.
and I look at him and say, "Okay, I tell you what." And before I could say anything, he looks at my wife and he says, "If you ever thought about changing your staircase, this would be the time to do it." And I had never heard those words put together like that in a sentence in my entire life, ever. If you thought about change your underwear, change your car, change your spouse, but not
Ugh.
change your stairs, right? So I say, "Okay, game on. If you can make something out of post and beam,
Yeah,
I'm there." And son of a bitch came back with
really?
drawings, and now we've got big Douglas fir 10 by 10 beams. All the walls are blown out, and it looks like a post and beam home, even though it's not.
Really?
And where I'm going with this is I have no idea other than I have a healthy respect for builders. And I think I shared with this earlier, and if I didn't, correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm looking for a word that defines what a builder is.
Huh.
And the word I was messing with or noodling with is hero. But when I think of the word hero, by definition, it's like a firefighter first comes to
Yeah,
mind. They see the flames, licking the side of the building, and they're the first ones to run in, and they're not running in stupidly or carefree. Like they realize that they are running into danger, right? So they are making a conscious decision to do so, as
yeah,
opposed to somebody who's stupid and said, "Well, I have no fear." Well, that's not a hero. You're an idiot. So when I look at builders, and you think about how many people they touch as a result of picking up a shovel. So humor me on this for a second. You decide that you're going to build a home, right? So now you're dealing with banks, you're dealing with lenders. Well, okay, now money is starting to flow. You're hiring people to come in to do the build. Well, now money's starting to flow to them. You're paying them a wage. So now they can afford to, hey, here's the thought, maybe they can buy their own home.
yeah,
The money is now flowing into the community because now you're supporting all the restaurants, coffee trucks, and everything else that these people go shopping to. On top of that, you're supporting all the local businesses that are supplying the goods and services to your build, right? So that's on one side of the glass. This is everything that you do. But I think the majority of builders forget on what's on the other side of that looking glass is the effect that you have on somebody that actually buys one of your homes. They've been scraping and saving so they can move. Let's forget about the multi-million dollars home, but
yeah,
they've been scraping and saving because now they've got the American dream, or in your case, homes built for America,
yeah,
right? They can actually move in and now they're creating the new chapter in their life, right? But not only that, have you given them a place where now legacy starts to, family stories, kids are being born. But I don't know how easy it is for you to save money. Like, beer bottles, that's my retirement fund. When I take beer bottles back to the store and they pay me, but to be able to put 50,000 a year aside, yeah, I don't know about that. But if you take the average home and give it a entry level price, 500,000, and we know that the average rate of appreciation, give or take, is around 10%. So every year that home is accruing another 50% in
yeah,
equity and another
yeah,
50, another 50. And so you're generating legacy wealth like they would have never, ever been able to do
yeah,
on their own. And at the end of that timeline, 15 years, 20 years, whatever that is, if they
yeah,
decide, well, it's time we're going to sell the home, now there's money that they can now hand off to the kids. And you did that.
yeah,
You did
exactly.
that. So my question to you is, how does that make you feel knowing that you have such a positive impact on so many people knowingly and unknowingly?
It's awesome. We talk about it all the time. I mean, I don't wanna call it a noble profession, but it is, and When you build houses for people, there's something rewarding and awesome about it, and we take a lot of pride on it. So we haven't coined the term yet, but I keep running around telling everybody we're a memory factory and we're a memory builder. Because that's really what we do, because the one thing every single one of our homeowners has in common, forget the culture, forget their age, they're all strangers when they move into one of our communities. None of them know each other, and that's the one thing they all have in common, and so what we've actually done, and it is different than every other builder, is we set up events for our homeowners. We have a meet your neighbor event. So once we kinda have some kind of mass of homeowners that have moved in, we have a meet your neighbor. Then we'll have an event on a Saturday where you bring your pets and we take pictures and give them little stuff, and then we do a Halloween pumpkin decorating thing with all the homeowners, and then we do, an ornament and cookie decorating around Christmas time, and we just force all of the residents to get together. We actually just have a little, like a little, farm, like a neighborhood, garden on one of our communities in Sunnyvale, and, we're gonna put together an event for them where they can come out and actually plant their, whatever they wanna do in the garden so they can cultivate it, and we just bring people together, and I tell you, it's totally working. And so when we go out to our communities, people wave to us, we see them, we have our homeowner association meetings, the people are happy, man. And every time somebody has a baby, we send them a Homes Built for America onesie. So that and they just we take a lot of pride and a lot of satisfaction, and we just do. It's like, it's really fun knowing. I mean, you remember when you bought your first house. I remember mine. It's like when you walk across into that house for your very first time, our townhome in Danville, I'm like, "Oh my god, we did it." Like, somehow we pulled this thing off. And then we had our first son in the house, and you're like, "This," it's just you just remember it. And I remember it to this day. I can tell you everything about our first townhome, everything. The colors, the
And that is so
cabinets,
cool.
and we're doing that for other people. People are getting promotions in our houses. They're having babies. They're getting married. They're having pets. It's like it's all happening in our houses. It's great.
Is that part of your all-encompassing customer service? Are you helping them have babies?
Uh, well, hopefully we're helping them have babies because 'cause they're not worried about their house. So
There
they
you
can
go,
actually
okay.
just, enjoy their life and not worry about, us having to come fix something because we take a lot of pride in our homes and,
Man,
we think we build a damn good home. So,
I salute you, Scott. The fact that you're involved so much and what you guys have been able to achieve in 4 years. Like,
yeah,
granted, you've been doing all the land acquisition, but what you've been able to do in
yeah.
4 years, I applaud you. I got one last question. Push back if you think it's inappropriate. I don't mean it to be. Would you consider yourself a religious person or a spiritual person?
Yeah, yeah, I do.
Okay, so then let me unpack this question. And this is something that I hope isn't going to happen for like years and years and years and years and years and years to come, right? But
Yeah,
you wake up one morning and you're standing at Heaven's Gate, and there's Saint Peter, and he looks at you, and you're at the front of the line, and he motions for you to come over, and he's got an iPad, and come on over here, Scott, and he's scrolling through this iPad, and everything he's scrolling through is your life, different
yeah,
things that you did, right? And he sees this one thing, and he's smiling, smiling, and then he looks over, kind of frowns a little bit, like a disgruntled parent, but he keeps scrolling through. And then he looks you right in the eye and he says, Scott, not today. Not today. You've got something left to do.
hmm,
What's that one thing you haven't done yet?
huh. Boy, I wasn't expecting that. I don't know. That's a hard question. I mean, I can tell you there's a bunch of things I wanna do, but what's the one thing I haven't done yet? I mean, I wanna get this company to be a top 25 company in the country. I mean, that is my mission, that is my goal. I wanna be the largest damn private company in this country, and I wanna see it happen before I die. A lot of it's personal, that's probably the one. The other one is I really wanna bring more young adults into this industry. We are lacking, like, really bad across this industry of just bringing in young adults into this business. It was a big thing before the big, financial crisis, but since then, we are missing a whole group of people in this industry, and everybody's kind of in their 40s and older, very few in their, 20s and 30s, and so I go out of my way to attract kids coming out of college to come work in our business. That's the other passion I have, and hopefully I'll get to a point in my life where I can focus more on that than my day job, but I don't know.
That's a branding thing, and you mentioned it earlier about instilling in them that it's a noble profession,
Yeah, it is.
right? As opposed to something you do because you can't do anything else.
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
such a misnomer and a crime that's been committed on a whole generation of kids. Like giving them
Yeah,
the ability to, back in shop class, I remember, we gauged how good the shop teacher was by how many fingers he still had left. But it gave us an introduction to be able to use the bandsaw and to do
yeah,
stuff. Otherwise, all
absolutely.
that's foreign, right? And being, I guess, from your perspective, I don't know what California legislation is like in insurance stuff, but being able to bring people onto the job site and letting them see how things get
Oh, I
done.
know.
I think that's how you instill people to say, you know what, this may be something for me.
Every time I get a kid in here, when I say kid, somebody in college, because we do internships here all the time. Once I get them here, they wanna come work here. I just gotta get them. You just gotta get them here, 'cause you love it. It's a fun business. I mean, it's exciting. It's really fun what we do, and it's hard, but there's always so many different things going on all the time. You get exposed to just so much. It's a fun job. It's a fun business, but the hard thing is
Yeah.
just getting people to come through the door.
Yeah. Scott, I think we've covered a lot of ground here. Anything that
I
I've
think so
missed
too.
that you kind of want to touch on or
Yeah, the only thing that I haven't touched on is I really don't understand why more people aren't buying houses right now. It's been pretty lackluster on sales for the last year, and I get the interest rates are high and the mortgage rates are high. I really don't understand it, and I've met with other division presidents and owners, and we're all just sitting here kinda just surprised. 'Cause, mortgage rates, they're not historically high. They're high just relative to what's gone on over the last 4 years, but they're not historically that high. Builders are giving you incentives, they're dropping prices, they'll give you closing cost credits, they'll give you upgraded options, and yet it just really hasn't provoked sales. Sales have kinda picked up over the last few weeks since the Fed dropped the interest rates, but, it's I don't get it. There's a saying, you marry the house, but you date the mortgage. But you have this whole group of first-time buyers, and I just don't know if it's because 'cause they're still scared of what they saw happen to their parents or relatives or friends from the great financial crisis, but unemployment's historically low. I mean, technically, we're at full unemployment. The tariffs haven't really been a thing. The immigration stuff's kinda settled down, which that was an issue here in the Bay Area because of all the visas. World wars aren't really going on like, could have been going on except for the Ukraine war and kinda what's happening over in Gaza, but, for the most part, things are pretty settled. People make good money. Inflation's kind of plateaued, yet people aren't buying houses, and yet we know that they need them. We know that there's family, formation going on, and we know people are still making good money and they can afford it, but they're just choosing not to. It's just this there's this some psychological thing going on that none of us can
is
figure
it
out.
but Scott, is it a choice or is it like if I look at your typical first time buyer right now,
Yeah,
like traditionally you would high school, you go to university,
yeah,
you get a degree, you come out of university and you get a half decent job, right?
yeah,
Within a couple of years, you've got a girlfriend, you can afford a house, you get married, you have your first kid, and it expands from there. You go from maybe a townhome, as you said, the logical progression used to be townhome or a
yeah,
little a story and a half, 900 square feet, and you get bigger progressively, right? If I look at this generation now that are coming out of university with degrees that aren't worth the paper that they're put on,
yeah,
that have no prospect of a career in front of them whatsoever, that are ending up in their parents' basement. And I don't mean that in
yeah,
to belittle them, but it's do I say it's not a fault of their own? Let me pin that for a second. You've got guidance counselors that are pushing them in a direction that there is no prospect of a future. Let's put it that way. And you've got universities that are catering to kids more so as glorified country clubs than they are places of academic learning, right? Then you put that aside for a sec, and then you look at the trade schools where I can go in and as I'm learning, I'm being paid.
yeah.
Once I'm done and I'm a tradesperson and I've done my apprenticeship and everything else, let's say 3, 4 years, I've got some experience under my belt. Perfect example. Plumber, I don't know him, but the guy that I told you about in DC that moved to California to
Yeah,
become a builder, his friend is a plumber. But when they first met, he was coming out to do some work on a site for him. Pulls up in his van, nice van. He's
yeah.
wearing a golf shirt with his logo. Unbeknownst to my friend, this guy owns a golf jet, a Lear jet, like a jet, lives in a mansion. And because he's got a plumbing service that he built off, starting with
Wow.
one person, him, and expand that into a team of, I don't know if it's 10 or 15 people,
Yeah,
but he's a
fantastic.
multimillionaire. And he still comes out to the site because he loves what he does. Right. But that would never happen unless you're introduced to the
Yeah.
trade, which takes us back to the word that you used, which is noble. And
Yeah.
we have to reinstill into the populace that, you know what? This is not an alternative. This isn't somewhere you go. Remember in high school, if you couldn't progress in the university, you
Yeah.
went to a trade school. And
Yeah.
so if you dumb it down, it's because if you can't do, this is where you can do.
Yeah.
And we got to change that altogether.
We do, and
Yeah.
but I do think this whole AI revolution, a couple of the industries that I've read about that should be fairly well protected from AI will be the construction industry, because you still need trades to build the houses, and then the healthcare system, because you still need people to, take care of people. So I do think that's probably gonna drive more people back into our business. At least I'm hoping, because, yeah, you can have a really good lucrative business being an electrician and a plumber and working in the trades. You totally can. You can have a great career and do
I can
well.
see AI and the future of technology will streamline the process and will
Yeah,
come out with new and fascinating ways to put a house together.
absolutely.
And when I look at modular, like some of the, when I say modular, there's the ones that are like Lego bricks. They're, 10 feet across and two guys can basically pick them up and they hammer them into place.
Yeah,
And it's like, okay, that's a Lego home that can be assembled in a day.
yeah,
And where this is going, and waterproof, pestilent proof, windproof, fireproof, like, and
yeah.
this is what's coming now.
It is
So
coming. It's exciting.
yeah, I guess, yeah, we could, I think there's a part 2 coming to this, Scott. So yeah, let's get it off here
Right
before
on.
we get long in the tooth. So once again, thanks, Scott, for taking time out. I
Thank
wish
you,
you,
Michael. This was fun. I appreciate it. It was awesome.
like I said, to be continued.
Right on.
Thanks for listening to Builder Straight Talk. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. Until next time, keep building smarter. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.